When a black woman walks into a luxury hotel she owns, the staff mistake her for a nobody and deny her a room. But the moment she reveals her true identity as the CEO, the tables turn. What follows is a powerful reckoning they never saw coming, and one they'll never forget. The Monarch Hotel towered like a crown jewel in the heart of Atlanta's marble columns and gold-trimmed windows radiating old-world grandeur. Tourists and executives alike flocked to it, eager to soak up the five-star luxury that had become synonymous with the Monarch name. But on this particular afternoon, something extraordinary was about to happen. Not a PR stunt, not a celebrity visit. Something more profound, something revealing. A lesson cloaked in prejudice, dressed up in entitlement, and poised to be taught by the very woman whose name adorned the deed. Avery Madison stood on the sidewalk across from the Monarch, her dark brown eyes scanning the entrance with quiet determination. She looked nothing like the image most people had in their minds of a hotel CEO. There were no designer handbags, no towering stilettos, no flashy jewelry. Her outfit was sharp, yet simple black jeans, a camel-toned blouse, and a sleek trench coat. Her natural curls framed her face like a halo of strength and grace. She looked like any other woman in Atlanta, smart, purposeful, blending into the background. And that was exactly how she wanted it. She crossed the street, pulled open the towering glass doors, and stepped into the heart of her own empire. The lobby buzzed with energy bellhops, moved like clockwork. Carrying monogrammed luggage, guests lounged on velvet chairs under chandeliers the size of small cars. Classical piano music wafted through the air, elegant and soothing. Avery inhaled the scent of polished wood and luxury linens. It still thrilled her. This place was her vision, her blood, sweat, and triumph incarnate. But today, the staff didn't recognize her, not immediately, and that made all the difference. Avery approached the front desk with a relaxed but confident air. The young white receptionist behind the counter barely glanced up. Her nama tag read Megan. She was too busy giggling at something on her phone, not even pretending to exude the warmth the Monarch was famous for. "Good afternoon," Avery said with a polite smile. "I have a reservation under the name Avery Madison." Megan blinked, finally acknowledging her. "Unhung, let me check." She typed half-heartedly for a few seconds, then frowned. "Nope, nothing under that name." Avery gave a nod. "Can you Maybe it's under a Madison. Sometimes my assistant does that." Megan rolled her eyes slightly, clearly annoyed to be inconvenienced. Still nothing. "Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" Avery's eyebrow lifted. "I'm quite sure. Well, like I said, we're fully booked tonight," Megan said with a shrug. "It's a busy weekend with the tech conference and the city gala. You might want to try the courtyard 2 blocks down. They're usually good about walk-ins." Avery was silent for a beat. That dismissive tone, that subtle smirk, it wasn't just bad customer service. It was a message, and she'd heard it before. Too many times she could have ended it right then, revealed who she was, watched the blood drain from Megan's face, and demanded an apology. But she was curious. How far would this go? "Are there any other managers available?" Avery asked. Megan sighed and waved over a sharply dressed man with slicked back hair. "David, can you help her? She says she has a reservation." David sauntered over, exuding smug professionalism. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you? I'm trying to check in." "Reservation under Avery Madison." He tapped on the screen, then gave her the same look Megan did, mild amusement mixed with disbelief. "No reservation. And as she mentioned, we're booked. Unless you have a confirmation number, there's nothing I can do." "I didn't bring it with me," Avery replied coolly. "But trust MIT exists." David offered a tight smile. "Well, without proof, I can't override the system. Maybe try a different property." Avery inhaled deeply. "Is this how you normally treat guests who say they have reservations?" "Only when they clearly don't," David replied. "We have procedures. I can't bend rules for just anyone." "Just anyone," Avery repeated slowly. Just then, a man in khakis and a polo shirt mid-40s white, flushed from the summer heat, strolled in. "Hey," the man said casually, "y'all got any rooms?" Megan immediately brightened. "Of course, sir. Let me check." Avery watched, stunned, as the same system that had just been declared fully booked miraculously produced a vacancy. In less than 30 seconds, Megan handed him a room key, a smile, and a complimentary drink ticket. Avery folded her arms. "Interesting. I thought you were full." David hesitated. "We hold a few rooms for special exceptions." So he qualifies, but I don't." "You're making this into something it's not," David said, suddenly defensive. "No, I'm making this into exactly what it is." Avery reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a thin leather wallet. She flipped it open to reveal a sleek black card with embossed gold lettering. "Founder, Monarch Global Hospitality Group." David's jaw twitched. "I'm not only a guest," she said. "I'm the owner of this hotel, and 12 others just like it." The silence was immediate and total. Megan's eyes widened. David's mouth hung open. A nearby bellhop nearly dropped the suitcase he was carrying. Avery placed her card on the counter like a gavel. "Now, should I wait here while you process my non-existent reservation? Or shall I just walk upstairs to the executive suite that bears my name?" David scrambled to respond. "Ms. Madison, I had no idea." I'm terribly sorry. Please allow me. Avery cut him off with a hand. Save it. She turned and strode past the front desk, her heels clicking against the polished floors. Guests and staff alike turned to watch, whispering in hushed tones. The woman they had just dismissed like a second-class citizen was actually the queen of the castle, and she was not pleased by the time she reached the elevator. Sharon, her longtime operations manager, was already waiting. Avery, I didn't know you were visiting today, Sharon said, surprised but pleased. You didn't call ahead. I wanted to see how the staff handles unexpected guests. Sharon's expression fell. Oh no, what happened? Avery stepped into the elevator. We'll talk upstairs. The penthouse suite was as stunning as Avery remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of downtown Atlanta. The walls were adorned with artwork by local black artists, one of Avery's initiatives. Every piece of the room was a symbol of pride, heritage, and excellence. But today, the pride felt distant. Sharon joined her on the sofa, her face tight with concern. They didn't recognize you. No. And that's not the problem. The problem is how they treated someone they thought didn't belong. Sharon sighed. It's not the first time I've heard complaints about Megan or David, but I didn't realize it was this bad. It's not just bad, Avery said. It's dangerous. If this is how they treat me, imagine how they treat our other black guests, when no one's watching, or people from any marginalized background. Sharon nodded. Do you want to fire them? Avery paused. It would have been easy. One phone call and both Megan and David would be out the door. But that wouldn't fix the deeper issue. No, Avery said. I want to teach them. I want them and everyone watching to understand exactly what they did wrong. Sharon's eyes lit up. What do you have in mind? Avery smiled, her strategist's brain already spinning. First, she said, I'm going to host a surprise staff meeting tomorrow. Mandatory attendance. Second, I want every guest interaction from the past 60 days reviewed. I want to know if this is a pattern or just a bad day. And third, Sharon asked. Avery looked out the window, the city lights sparkling like embers of promise. Third, she said, I'm going to make sure the world hears this story, not for vengeance, not for applause, but for change. Because if people like David and Megan could look at a black woman and see only what they expected to see, then it was time to shatter those expectations. Loudly, publicly, permanently. This wasn't just about a room, it was about respect. And Avery Madison had built her entire empire on the promise that everyone deserved it. The next morning, the staff of the Monarch Hotel were summoned to the main conference hall, an ornate ballroom, typically reserved for high-profile galas and luxury corporate retreats. The giant crystal chandeliers overhead glistened in the early daylight. But the mood in the room was anything but festive. The hotel's employees filled the space in uneasy silence, unsure why they had been called in so suddenly. Rumors had begun swirling the moment Avery Madison walked through the lobby the night before. Some whispered that a celebrity had been denied service. Others suggested the CEO had made a surprise visit. Nobody knew the full truth yet. David stood stiffly near the back, arms crossed, his face tight with discomfort. Megan sat near the front, nervously fidgeting with her name tag. The rest of the staff, front desk clerks, bellhops, managers, kitchen workers, and housekeepers watched each other with tense curiosity. This was no routine morning meeting. Then the doors opened. Avery Madison stepped in, wearing a sharp navy blue pantsuit, no longer incognito. Her natural curls were pinned back in a regal twist. She radiated the kind of commanding presence that filled the room without a single word. At her side was Sharon, who looked every bit the right hand to a powerhouse CEO. Avery's expression was calm, measured, but there was no mistaking the storm. Behind her eyes, she walked to the front of the room and stood at the center of the stage. A single podium waited there, the Monarch logo gleaming on its face. Avery didn't need it. She looked out at the crowd, made eye contact with several team members, and then clasped her hands together. Good morning, she said, her voice clear and resonant. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know you have jobs to do, guests to serve, and duties to manage. But what we're about to talk about is more important than any guest check-in or room turnover. There was a murmur in the crowd. Eyes widened. Backs straightened. Avery continued, her tone sharp. Last night, I walked into this hotel, the very one I built from the ground up with a reservation under my name, and I was denied, dismissed, disrespected, not because of a policy, not because of a full booking, but because the people standing behind that front desk saw a black woman and assumed she didn't belong. David shifted uncomfortably. Megan's face flushed crimson. Avery paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room like thunderclouds. I didn't tell you who I was at first. That was intentional. Because I wanted to see how you treat people when you don't think they have power. I wanted to see if our values, the ones this company claims to stand for, exist only on paper, if they live in practice. She began to walk slowly along the front of the room, every step deliberate. I watched a white man walk in behind me, ask for a room with no reservation, and be given one instantly. I watched staff make assumptions about who's worthy of service. I was told politely, of course, that I might feel more comfortable at another hotel, a less premium one. There was now a visible wave of discomfort. Some employees looked shocked. Others looked ashamed. Many avoided her gaze entirely. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," Avery said, stopping in the center of the room again. "But I am here to educate and to set a new standard." She took a deep breath, then turned to Sharon. "Sharon, would you bring me the report?" Sharon stepped forward with a folder, handing it to Avery. Inside were a stack of documents, complaints, staff behavior reviews, and surveillance summaries. Avery opened it and lifted the first page. "In the last 60 days, we've received 7 formal complaints about staff bias at the front desk, all from Black or Latino guests. For 30 of them were from women traveling alone. 2 were from families. 1 was from a well-known civil rights attorney who wrote, and I quote, 'The monarch is beautiful, but I've never felt more invisible in a place so grand.'" She flipped to another page. "This one. My wife and I checked in for our anniversary. I'm Black, she's white." The concierge kept addressing her, never once speaking to me directly. She looked up. "This is not excellence, this is not hospitality, and this is not what I built this company for." Avery closed the folder. The silence in the room was absolute. Then her voice shifted lower, more personal. "I know what it's like to be overlooked, to be underestimated, to walk into a room and have someone assume you're the assistant, not the boss. I've lived it. I built this hotel chain not just to create beautiful spaces, but to challenge the norms of who belongs in them." Her eyes swept the room. "So, here's what's going to happen." Every head lifted, effective immediately. "We are overhauling our entire customer service training program. Everyone from management to housekeeping will undergo mandatory bias and inclusivity training, led by professionals, not HR videos. Secondly, we will create an anonymous reporting system where guests and employees can flag discriminatory behavior without fear of retaliation. Third, every location in the Monarch global family will undergo an internal culture audit starting with this one." There were gasps, whispers, murmurs of understanding. "Additionally," Avery continued, "we're instituting a mystery guest program. Trained actors of all backgrounds will pose as guests who observe how they are treated, and their feedback will determine bonuses, promotions, and even continued employment." She looked directly at David. "I'm placing David on administrative leave while we investigate his conduct. Megan will be reassigned to guest services support away from the front desk. You'll both have the opportunity to attend training and return, but only if you prove you've learned and grown." David opened his mouth, perhaps to defend himself, but stopped. There was no room for excuses. Avery softened her tone just slightly. "This isn't about punishment. It's about accountability. It's about growth. We don't fire people at the first sign of failure, we teach them, but we also don't tolerate behavior that makes our guests feel like outsiders in a space that's supposed to welcome them." She gestured toward the back of the room. "I've invited several local leaders and community organizers to help guide us in this effort, including Pastor Green, who runs the local housing justice nonprofit, and Dr. Torres, a day consultant who's helped transform companies twice our size." The 2 individuals rose and waved, earning a respectful round of applause. "We're not just going to change policy," Avery said. "We're going to change culture." There was something else in her voice now, hope, "because I believe this hotel can become more than luxurious. It can become legendary. But only if we treat every guest, every colleague, every human being with dignity and respect." The staff began to nod. Slowly at first, then more earnestly. Avery stepped down from the stage and moved through the crowd, pausing to meet the eyes of employees who looked shaken, confused, emotional. Some were whispering apologies to each other. Others simply stood in silence. Reflecting, she reached a young black bellhop near the door. His name tag read Andre. He looked up at her, his eyes glistening. "Thank you," he whispered, "for doing this." Avery smiled. "You deserve it." Later, that afternoon, Avery sat down with her PR team in the executive suite. The meeting was brief, but crucial. "We're going to release a statement," she said, "not to protect our image, but to tell the truth. No spin, no excuses. I want the public to know exactly what happened and what we're doing about it." Her lead communications director, a sharp black woman named Tara, nodded. "It'll be a risk, but the right kind. The best kind," Avery replied. By evening, the statement had gone live. Yesterday, the CEO of Monarch Global was denied service in her own hotel not because she lacked a reservation, but because she was not recognized as someone who belonged. "We want to make it abundantly clear. Discrimination has no place in our hotels, our staff, or our brand. We are taking immediate steps to rectify the incident, retrain our team, and ensure every guest feels not only welcomed, but seen, valued, and respected. This is a moment of reckoning, and we embrace it with humility and action." The response was instantaneous. Social media lit up. Monarch moment began trending within hours. Thousands of users praised Avery for her leadership. Influential voices from celebrities to civil rights groups shared the story and offered support. "Finally, a CEO who walks the talk," one user wrote. "She didn't just clap back, she changed the game." Another tweeted. News outlets picked it up the next day. CNN, MSNBC, even the Wall Street Journal ran a piece titled, "When the CEO Isn't Recognized, A story of race, power, and the new face of leadership. But the most powerful impact wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet shift inside the monarch's halls. Staff began speaking more thoughtfully. Team members checked their assumptions. Policies changed, but more importantly, people changed. Not overnight, not all at once, but steadily, visibly. David attended every training session, asked difficult questions, and sat with his discomfort. Megan volunteered to shadow the concierge team to better understand the full guest experience. And Andratha Young Bell, who thanked Avery, was promoted to assistant front desk manager. 3 months later, the hotel began receiving glowing reviews from guests of all backgrounds. Words like inclusive, warm, and real started showing up in online comments and TripAdvisor blurbs. Avery remained humble, but unwavering. This was just the beginning, because if one hotel could change, so could the entire industry. But first, she had one more surprise in store. 3 months had passed since that unforgettable morning in the Monarch Hotel ballroom. In that time, everything had shifted from how guests were welcomed to how employees treated each other behind closed doors. But for Avery Madison, change wasn't just about policy shifts or performance reviews. It was about culture, consciousness, legacy. She had weathered controversy, stood firmly in the media spotlight, and faced down both silent resistance and open applause. But she wasn't finished, not even close. Avery sat in her office on the 28th floor of Monarch Global's corporate headquarters, a modern glass tower that overlooked downtown Atlanta like a throne room with a view. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond her window, but her focus was on the screen in front of her. An idea that had lived in her heart for years was finally coming to life. She clicked through the slides of a presentation titled Project Dignity, Redefining Hospitality in America. The mission was bold, a national racial equity initiative targeting the hotel and service industries. The goal? To establish a new certification, standard for inclusivity and unbiased service, something akin to a Michelin star for anti-discrimination excellence. Any hotel that passed the rigorous criteria: staff diversity, inclusivity training, equitable promotion structures, mystery guest reviews, and guest satisfaction reports across racial and social lines would earn the Dignity Seal. It would be more than a plaque on the wall. It would be a promise, a guarantee that no matter who walked through the doors, black, white, Latino, Asian, indigenous, disabled, LGBTQ, they would be treated like they belonged. Avery stood and paced the room, her mind electric with purpose. She remembered the sting of that moment being turned away in her own hotel. But what had grown from that pain was something more powerful than vengeance. It was clarity, a roadmap, a mission. Her assistant Kara knocked and poked her head in. The press is setting up downstairs. You ready? Avery smiled. Always. Downstairs, reporters buzzed with anticipation in the Monarch Global Media Lounge. The room was packed. Dozens of journalists, influencers, and industry leaders filled the seats. Camera crews adjusted their equipment. The story had exploded beyond the initial viral headlines. Now, the world wanted to know what Avery Madison would do next. She took the stage dressed in a sleek white pantsuit, standing beneath a backdrop that simply read, "Welcome in, always." "Good morning," she began, voice calm but commanding. 3 months ago, I walked into one of my hotels and was told I didn't belong. The truth is, moments like that happen to people every day. People of color, women, LGBTQ+ individuals, people with disabilities. The hospitality industry is built on the idea of welcome, but too often, welcome comes with conditions. She paused. As flashbulbs popped, I wasn't angry that day because I didn't get a room. I was angry because I saw something deeper: a pattern, a quiet, constant erosion of dignity faced by those who walk through doors and are seen as less. Avery clicked a remote, and a large screen behind her lit up. It displayed the logo for Project Dignity, an open door, with rays of light pouring through it. Today, I'm proud to announce a new standard, one that goes beyond stars and suites. One that asks, do your guests feel respected? Do your employees feel safe? Do your practices reflect the values you claim to uphold? She detailed the Dignity Seal and its 5 pillars: representation, accountability, transparency, equity, and empathy. Within the first hour, over 100 independent hotels and several national chains pledged to undergo the certification process, not out of fear of public shame but because they finally saw a clear path toward meaningful change, something measurable, tangible, real. After the press conference, Avery met privately with a group of hotel owners, some supportive, others skeptical. "I've been running hotels for 25 years. One older white man said, "I never considered the possibility that some of my guests might feel less welcome than others. Not intentionally, of course." "Most bias isn't intentional," Avery replied, "but it's still harmful. Intent doesn't matter nearly as much as impact." "But how do we even begin to fix something so ingrained?" another owner asked. Avery smiled gently, with humility, with courage, and with the understanding that excellence isn't just about thread counts and wine lists, it's about humanity. As the initiative gained traction, Avery began traveling the country. She visited hotels in Chicago, Miami, Denver, and small towns in between. She sat down with staff in kitchens, rode elevators with housekeepers, ate lunch in break rooms, and listened to stories that echoed her own stories of being passed over, talked down to, or simply ignored. Each story fueled her resolve. One day, in Birmingham, Alabama, she visited a boutique hotel run by a young Latina woman named Carla who had adopted dignity protocols before the certification was even finalized. Carla told her how her staff meetings now began with a single question: who didn't feel seen this weekend? How do we fix it? Avery hugged her on the spot. Meanwhile, the Monarch Hotel in Atlanta had become a case study in transformation. Industry publications called it a blueprint for conscious hospitality. Guest reviews skyrocketed, employees reported increased job satisfaction, and the once uncomfortable David had become one of the most vocal advocates for inclusivity on staff. He even created a mentorship program to support new hires from underrepresented backgrounds. One day, after a guest approached Avery at the Monarch lobby to thank her for changing the whole vibe, Megan, now working in a public relations role, pulled her aside and asked, "Do you believe people like me can really change?" Avery looked at her, no longer with judgment, but with measured grace. "Not only do I believe it, I've seen it." But the real proof came a few weeks later, when Avery returned to the Monarch for another unannounced visit. This time she entered the lobby wearing jeans, sneakers, and a hoodie. No makeup, no announcement, just herself. She approached the front desk. A young black man greeted her with a bright smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Monarch. Do you have a reservation?" "I do," she replied. "Under Avery Madison." He typed, paused, then smiled wider. "Welcome home, Ms. Madison. We're honored to have you. May I offer you a complimentary beverage while we prepare your suite?" Avery exhaled slowly. The words settled around her like warm sunlight. Not because of the perks, but because of the recognition, the respect. That night, as she stood on her penthouse balcony, sipping tea and watching the Atlanta skyline sparkle, Avery thought of her grandmother housekeeper who had scrubbed hotel floors for pennies during the Jim Crow era, who was never once thanked by name, who was told to use the service entrance. Avery imagined her now, smiling down with pride. What had started as a moment of quiet humiliation had become a movement. Avery hadn't just claimed her room back, she had opened the door for everyone.